Today I have my good friend Angelica. Say hi, Angelica.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for having Jesus. Thank you for being here, and I'm grateful for having you. Yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and then I'll kind of get into what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, well, as far as being with you in the in the studio, I mean, I'm a Reiki Master. I've been doing Reiki for about 2 years, which super funny. I never thought I'd be doing this stuff. I was a skeptic, but years ago, had this whole path where I just felt like I really needed a change in my life. So that's kind of how everything just domino affected. And now I do it. I do that now. And I also really like music. So I'm figuring that out along the way.
Yes, Angelica with the CK is always what I reference you with when it comes to like your artistry and your music.
That's so funny. Pat actually called me a CK because of like the anger and the tude.
I think we're just going to start calling you CK.
I think it's really fitting, honestly. I love it. It's
love
my
it.
little duality thing,
Oh, well, I love all the many versions of you that you are. Met you about like 6 months ago? Was it 6 months ago?
Yeah, April.
Or maybe it's more than 6 months now, 8 months.
A little over, but time flies.
Okay, yes. So Angelica is also a practitioner at our office at the office, ORA Ritual and Practice. And it's been amazing. So today I want to talk about the energies that we're all currently experiencing and like a pattern that I'm starting to notice right now. So what I'm starting to notice, which we've also elaborated on in doing a duo session with From a Distance, is perspective. Seeing things from a whole different perspective. And I know that's constantly the subject and everything, right? We're always releasing, letting go what no longer serves, all of that stuff. But there is always like this group of like energy that comes in like these waves. And it's like, all right, this is the fucking focus. Mm-hmm. And right now it seems to be its perspective. And I feel that alongside with the perspective is this bulk of wave of like energy in opportunity that is here. It's like, here's opportunity. And then here is what we need to do to kind of like open the door to have all of this opportunity and its shifting perspective. Do you think you could relate?
Totally. I mean, there's always that fine line in what we're experiencing, and then the tests just come daily, right? But It's up to us in that moment to really shift how do I react? Mm-hmm. Do I take a pause and do I take the higher road, the road less traveled?
And I guess that depends on, the situations in life, right? And what they want to choose. And I feel like the universe is always giving us those options, always. Mm-hmm. So what I've also noticed in everything that I've been doing, clients, even in my own personal life, that our strength has been built to the certain extent where we're a lot more stronger than we were like 2 months ago, even a year ago. But all of those many timelines and the strength that we're all having now, it's like, all right, what perspective are we in now? And what are you going to choose with all of this new strength? And everyone now is choosing them, which is beautiful. Love. Because it's like, so in Reiki, it's like the whole point was for us to get you to see what's happening so that you can choose overall self and like more of that love and deepening in self constantly. So I had a client that has been working with me for a while, and her husband actually moved out recently, and she was just like, I don't even care anymore. Not that she was like waiting for that, but she was like, I just feel like it was the weight in my life that she never would have thought of, but then at the same time knew, which is weird, right? It's because like you could think about these things, but you don't really like accept it fully until it's happening. But I think that's a good thing in a way, because she's like in flow, doing what she needs to do, trying to stay balanced each day. And then now her husband's like, I'm going.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, okay, not really much of a plot twist, but old version of her would have been like, she would have been like, what am I going to do? Like anxiety driven and all these things. But instead she's just like, wow, I'm so strong. This was whether it was coming or not, like I'm seeing it from this point of view now. And she actually sent me a text message and was just giving thanks and blessed to be able to have this other point of view, which I'll read in a little bit. But do you notice like this strength that's coming for yourself too? Because I feel it like in myself, and I'm seeing it in mirrors in my client. Like I'm like, wow, I'm seeing the strength that you've had that I actually helped you come into also, but at the same time, you've helped me come into. So it's always like this mirror effect, like this dual transformation happening all the time.
Yes, no, absolutely. I think this is the time where everybody as a collective, we're choosing ourselves. I mean, now I feel the most authentic I've ever been. Like I feel like I've
that.
I feel like I've been just feeding my inner child, whatever that means to me, saying yes to more things I actually like and no without explanation to things I don't give a shit about.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of
proud of
times when we
everybody.
weren't choosing ourselves, it was because of what we wanted for our inner child a lot of times. And
Yeah.
now that when we're choosing self, we start realizing like, oh, we could have always given this to ourselves and we wanted it from someone else. But now when you recognize that, because you're in this newfound strength, I guess, within yourself, then you realize what's not serving you and you're so fine with that. You're just okay
Right.
with
And
them walking away.
I'm walking away. And I think it also has to do a lot with the things that, before I used to say yes to things because it was like temporarily going to serve me, maybe because of a lack mindset or, maybe this I thought would protect me or whatever reason, In that time, we choose things where we think that we could hold enough capacity for stuff,
Yeah.
whatever. Sometimes that's another thing too, perspective of the timeline shift. Like ultimately we know what we really want, but in that moment it's like, fuck,
Ah.
I don't know.
And then
Maybe I need to
also
go through it one more
knowing,
time.
yeah, and like also knowing that we've always wanted that, but timeline, like highlight timeline, sometimes it's not in the right time. You're going to keep going through those same patterns until your perspective is ready to be like, shifted. You see it now? And then you're like, I see it now. Oh my God.
When it slaps you in the face.
Yeah.
I'll
Or like
cry.
more like punches you. And then you're like, wow. Oh my God. Yeah. That doesn't serve me, but it maybe didn't serve you the whole freaking time. But at the same time, that's also like interesting because whatever you've gone through, it's meant to serve you and have lessons throughout the way. So we got to be grateful about it.
That's so true.
Yeah. Well, I want to read the text message that she said. So let's see. So she said, after we spoke yesterday, I was able to get different perspective and thought process on what was happening. I spoke to him this morning and showed him the journal app on his phone. He agreed to start journaling and also find the counselor lady that helped him back during his processes. I know I can't save him. He has work to do, but I understand what is happening is better now. Thank you.
Wow.
She said, mental health and self care is really the only thing that matters in life. Thank you so much for helping me get my mental health together. She says, I saved her, but of course, she saved herself, right? She chose self. Because when I started working with her, it was very anxiety driven, and a lot of times she was doing a lot for other people. And at the beginning of that text message, she's talking about basically knowing that she can't help him and he's going to have to help himself. And that's a lot of thing with people with big hearts, right? We have to go through these phases of like knowing how we're overgiving and it's taking from us. And that's also how we're not choosing self during those times, but that's also the challenge. Because by the time you kind of reach that capacity where you can't give people anymore because there's nothing left to give, we start thinking about how to give back to ourselves and kind of like juice up again. And then when you're juiced up, we start recognizing how, oh, this is the place I could give from. Not before when there was nothing to give. But then you have to learn it constantly by like overgiving and having nothing left in you. But I'm like, that's the point. We don't need to give everything until there's nothing left to help people. You help people by helping yourself.
Right. And then that's the other perspective too. It's like, where's the intention lie?
Yeah.
Are we giving because we want to receive back? And a lot of the patterns that I'm seeing in our clients or even in myself too was that we were lacking those boundaries, but we were like, oh, maybe I can give you more. I feel like I'll be okay. But then, the compilation of all of that energy is draining.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of everybody right now. It seems like we're really shifting into that power.
Yeah. So in the topic of perspective, you've also been expanding in your perspectives by some books that I provided you in the beginning. Was in the beginning of like, I guess, our days, or I don't know. Books are like my love language. And if I'm like,
too.
okay, I could see where you're at, or I could feel where you're at, whatever the intuition's telling us, right? And I'm like, this book can talk to you. Like it will expand you. How, why? Don't know. I just can see that you're at this level for like whatever this book is going to feed you is it for like this moment in time. And I've seen so much growth in you from like your very first session with me and how you've been communicating in sessions to like, whoa, I'm like, did you even notice how much broader your perspective is? Not that it was narrow, but we're constantly always growing and broadening all of our many perspectives. And I feel like I can tell because of all the work that you've been doing.
I know, literally, thank you so much. I mean, the book that really sticks out to me the most is the medical intuition book. And you've put me in a place where I can expand my questions, right? And it's like before, you don't know what you don't know, but when you start asking more questions, it's like the next door opens.
Yeah.
And then okay, the more questions I ask, the more that I receive.
Yeah.
And so you've been helping me in this whole time to just train that muscle. So
Yeah. Because I've noticed too, it's like, okay, we can do Reiki, but then we're also doing a lot more in Reiki, or at least I know I was or I am. And I want everyone to be able to do as much as they possibly can. Like Reiki is just a stepping stool, just like how tarot cards are, or anything that we do, anything that anyone can do. There's always like something you start off with, and then there's just possibilities, right? So I just knew it was possible for all of us at the shop to just expand and do the most that we can. And people love the stories that come out of their bodies because it's wow, right? Like who knew our body could speak? All the energy, all the frequency can translate. So being able to understand how to see those is a whole different perspective. But the key, I think, in everything in life is to just be curious. But our limitation in our imagination, we grow up kind of limiting, right? Like how far we can dream, how far we can see. But if you remember that you can ask anything, what would you ask? And then what will it show you? What can it show you? And now you're being able to experience all of the many other visuals you can see from working with a client.
right. And that's what I'm most grateful for you too, Rara, is because when I was first on this journey, learning Reiki and being in front of all these different practitioners, they teach you how to do Reiki, but they don't necessarily teach you how to exercise the trust in yourself. And what does that look like enhancing your psychic abilities or whatever we're doing? We all see differently. And that's something that I want to talk about with you too, because I think a lot of people love the way that you channel your messages. And it's so different from anything else that I've heard.
Yeah.
So
And I definitely think it's the perspectives, right? It's like every perspective you see, everyone is talking from their own perspective and they have their own language. So being able to be like, okay, they speak this way, just like every single book is a different perspective, but we could all be talking about the same thing, but it's getting kind of shifted on how they're presenting or translating how their experience is, right? So that literally is all perspective, which is beautiful. So there was an exercise that I had Angelica do, and we did it together. And it was with a friend of ours who's also a practitioner in the shop. And she asked for a session, and I knew what the subject was in regards to providing this distance session, and Angelica didn't. And I held that back so I could have her kind of like exercise these parts of her mind that she's learned from her medical intuition book and utilize it in this session. So it was with Jasmine, our good friend Jasmine. And Jasmine,
Hey, Jazz.
I know, hey Jazz, we're using you here. But I want to bring up what she asked, and we could go over that.
I know that was really cool to see.
So she said, I spoke with someone at work and he was giving off really angry and aggressive energy towards me in the chat at work. And since then, I've been having pain on my right hypochondrium. Like it felt like it was going inside me when he was being a total asshat to me. LOL. So after that, I messaged you and I was like, hey, do you want to do an exercise? And right before even this whole subject, we were just at the office together, like just kind of meditating and like seeing where you were at in the book, but at the same time, knowing where you're at physically in the book, where were you at internally, and trying to get those two things to bridge, right? Mm-hmm. And you were talking about how you would dive into, you like shrink and dive into like people's bodies, right? And then kind of like trace the body that way. Medical intuition is very interesting because there is no, you could understand and see organs, emotions, energies, like all these many things. It's almost like X-ray vision to the body. Mm-hmm. So I wanted Angelica, you, to exercise that, and I had to do it with Jasmine. And distance sessions for Reiki, I would say it's simple, complex. It like really breaks through time and space because a session in the office could be 45 minutes and then a distance session's like 10, 15.
Right. It's almost as if everything just comes to you at once.
Yeah.
Almost like a dream. Mm-hmm. Like you feel like when you wake up from the dream, it was longer than it was, but it's like, oh, I literally fell asleep for 2 minutes?
Yeah, and then I'll literally not message people for like 10 minutes so that they know it kind of took longer. And I'm like, okay, I swear I'm not chipping you. Like it's just kind of quicker when you're at afar. But yeah, and then we worked on her body, right? And then do you remember what you picked up?
I do remember. So Rara actually sent me a text about the body, and there was like an anatomy of the grid of the body. I don't know much about anatomy. I took anatomy when I was probably a freshman in high school because I went to respiratory therapy. But anyways, long story short, didn't know what the right hypochondrium consisted of. But when she told me to dive in, it was literally as if I dove into her body like the Magic School Bus, if you guys know that reference. And so I went all the way down, and then there was something in there that I was like, well, I need to focus on this certain area. So then I asked the question of, so how does this feel? What am I feeling when I'm diving in there? What is it? And then literally a bean, like a kidney bean, popped into my mind, and it flashed a light. And it was telling me something about dehydration. Mm-hmm. And she was anxious in that moment. Not necessarily her energy, but something that day was causing her some anxiousness. And then I think we talked about just repeating old patterns and things like that and expanding upon that. So when I texted you, and you told me what happened and what you got, that was just mind-blowing.
Yeah, and I expressed to you how that perspective was beautiful. So I have it, so I'm going to read it, okay? Is that okay? Okay.
Love it.
So I told you to send me yours when you're ready, and you put kidney bean lit up, white, hazy gray, looked tiny, felt like it was neglected. So I asked, what does that mean? How is her body in this current state? You said dehydration, because by too much alcohol, body wants more protein to ingest. Had a vision of me watering bean with the water pail, and it grew like Jack and the Beanstalk. So you guys could have like a visual, right? I asked what this is linked to. You said anxiety and worry of how things will grow. You said, what things? Love and career? Stop worrying about the how. Body needs to be more disciplined in detox because of her powers and abilities to what is coming next to step into role. So I thought that was a beautiful perspective. And there is no wrong perspective. Like what is wrong and what is right, like does not exist, right? It's just in how we all see it. And this was what I picked up. And hence again, a reminder, we're working on the same person.
Yeah, this is good, guys. You got to listen.
Mine sounds so alien sometimes, but I put perspective 1. Lots of emotions clogged up into that area, specific area she requested. I put emotional symbol and turned darkness in the area to light. So hence dark to light, just like switched it on. Perspective 2, a serpent laid an egg, as in someone negative tried to grow negativity into her body in that spot. It was energetically processing fast. By the time I cleaned it out, the egg from that nesting space, it was a small serpent and it slithered away when I threw it on the ground. Hence, again, time and space, right? I'm like, okay, there's an egg. Next, I took out the egg and it's like, oh, the serpent already fucking grew. I thought it was just an egg. So it's like the processing time was very quick. So imagine if that stayed in her body, what that serpent and whatever that symbolizes, hence the foreign little thing in her body, how that was going to slither and maybe grow within her and nest some more. So after that, I naturally got put pulled in to do perspective number 3. Traced her body and checked on quote unquote flow. Flow looked undisturbed and then went into checking chakras. Expanded her crown a bit and went down the center. She looked good. Last message that came through is she needs to drink more water because it was taking from her and started to activate depletion, dehydration. So we picked up on that both, right, from our 2 different perspectives, which was amazing. So me knowing what the subject was, though, I was able to understand that it was an energy from outside going into her. So I was able to see the serpent. But me holding that information back from you, what you were able to see was all focused just on her.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Right. Which I love that whole exercise too, because I mean, as much as we do this, sometimes a little bit of self-doubt can sometimes arise. It's just our human fears in ourself. And so that was great confirmation for me. And I'm like, wow, Rara's a good teacher.
I mean, it's just the process and like the evolution of the mind, body, soul integrating together and compartmentalizing how we're getting spoken to, like how the mind's talking to you, hence the mind, the brain. And then the mind also, like, hence with the third eye, because they're very near each other. And then with your ears. And then again with our heart, like they all have a different language. So I love teaching how all of these different parts of us are all speaking at the same fucking time, but how you can distinguish which one's which. Because when people are like, I don't really know. And I'm like, I think you know, right? Like how we were just talking in the beginning, where like, I think we always knew, but then why we don't just stick to what we really know. Sometimes it's the journey. It's the time of like when you're supposed to and what you're learning in that lesson and that, that situation.
Right. There's like that human free will and then versus divine destiny. It's
Yeah,
like,
divine timing, which we were kind of talking about, right? In regards to like when people are doing these practices, sometimes these practices as in maybe like manifestation or like calling in things, like, are they messing with timelines? Maybe like spells or what, but it's like
spells.
But then it's all about perspective, how we're seeing it. I was like, well, if it's light and then dark, maybe light is good, the dark is bad. But at the same time, who are we to say? Because there are some cultures that practice things that maybe we would see as negative, dark. We don't fuck with that.
Right.
But then what if they fuck with it because that's just what they're born to fuck with?
I mean, and some people think Reiki is evil,
Yeah.
So that's another thing to touch up on, maybe another podcast. But yeah, it's not a
Yeah.
religion, just FYI, everybody.
It really isn't. And that's why I love doing what we do, because it shows people how this is normal. Every part of us exists in the mind, body, soul way. It's like there's energy. And then there is the blood. And then there is like the physical body and everything that is working in conjunction together. But some people don't want to do anything energetic. And again, that's their perspective.
Right. It's like, what game do you want to play? We have the free will to explore it all, which that's why Kabbalah has really resonated with me recently, because it's all about God, the creator, is it, and that we do deserve it all. Mm-hmm. And then the suffering is just like the temporary little side quests. And like, are you going to defeat the boss? Or are you going to like take like 9 more times?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the Kabbalah.
And the Kabbalah. So what I've learned so far, it's Jewish mysticism, and it's just all about spirituality. A lot of people actually, they have a different religion, but when you study this, it's just able to kind of help you put things into a different perspective. So they really do believe that there's no really good or bad. There's something called the tikkun, where our souls come here, and tikkuns are like our soul correction. So certain lessons that we need to learn.
Yeah.
And how do we pivot that? How do we react?
Is it kind of like our contract? Like our soul contract?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's like we pick our soul contracts. We come here and we have certain lessons. Like for me, I would say probably my tikkun is abandonment and just like a lot of parental stuff.
Yeah.
But I've been able to really see the goodness in the abundance of my friendships and being able to heal outside of just what my past was, so.
Yeah. And again, I think that all relates obviously to perspective. I think everything in life is just perspective. Literally. Like there was an example of or there was this time where I was doing some work things and I didn't know if it was serving me. But I realized as I kept doing what I was doing every day, wondering that I was stuck in a perspective because wondering if it was going to serve me or not, I was so in trying to be in control of making sure every decision I made was going to serve me. But I was like, wait, now I'm lacking this trust in like allowing the situation to even serve me because I'm kind of like guarded.
Right.
And once I shifted my perspective of like, okay, this doesn't come to me for no reason. I am guarded because of my past and I don't want that to repeat. I'm trying to hold the control of it not repeating. I realized in my perspective during that time, I had to let that go. And then after that, everything was beautiful. I didn't mind going every single day. I started to trust the process of knowing why I was going every single day. And I think we just all need a reminder constantly that it's like, it's all in how you see it. Like when people are living stressed, like my mom, I'm like,
Hi, Nita.
I'm like, hey, just putting you all on blast here. But it's like you guys are all choosing to be in that perspective, right? Like everyone is trying to hustle. Everyone's trying to do what they need to do for family, for friends, for themselves. But if you're stressed doing it, no one wants that for you. So all you can do is like step back and start serving you and take charge of like how you're seeing life. Because if all you're seeing it is as stress, your body's going to react to that.
Right. And it all goes down to, like what you said, the power in asking the right questions. So what does that mean, right? You could have asked, how does this serve me? Versus like, why does this serve me? It's a totally different vibration in you know, an intention.
And I definitely think it comes with like the depletion, right? As in, what I mean by it comes with depletion, why people don't ask that is because there's not much room in themselves to even ask that. They don't feel like there's time, there's pressure. And then in that pressure, they don't feel like they can do much other than what they believe they need to do to get to that liberation, to have time to be like, okay, what do I really need?
Right. Some people, it just takes time, right? It's like, who are the influences in your circle? And then unlearning all of that preconditioned mindset, it's hard.
Like the childhood trauma.
Yeah, I mean, you know, our parents and then our grandparents, they weren't all about self-awareness and therapy. There was no such thing as freaking depression or like, diagnosed with anxiety. They're like, oh, you feel that? No, still go to work.
Yeah, I actually think that people are shifting more into like this awareness because they're asking more questions.
Right.
Which is beautiful because, again, you need to be curious of like, okay, if my life feels like it's stagnant or on repeat, why? It's like the gold right there. Why?
Why? Literally, and I think that's something that I can say. As a kid, I always challenged the norm.
Yeah, same.
And I'm sorry, mother. I'm sorry I gave you all those headaches. But I mean, I see how
But that's
it
why you're
helped
so
me
abundant.
now. You know? I see now. It was okay. Like, although there was that tension and clash, it all served its purpose because then you lead by example.
Yeah. When I was saying why, it's funny because a song came in my head and then I realized, oh, it's the fucking Michael Jackson song. But that's how like channels come in. It's like, why?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That is human nature.
Why?
Do you do me that way? And I'm like, that is so relevant. Because everything that has happened is human nature, but we don't have to like dwell in the human ick. Ick. I know we got the word ick from this movie that we watched. Actually, that I was channeling. That was like from because you're studying Kabbalah.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm sure in this podcast there's going to be so many gaps because the channel speaks and then we're physically speaking here. And then it's like, wait, what? But okay. So Angelica was studying Kabbalah. And everything that I watch, there's not a reason, or is that how I should explain it? There's never no reason why I'm watching these things or doing anything.
Right. Like it's very, for whatever reason, things that you tell me to watch, very much, there's a lesson for me.
Yeah.
Or
everything is just a fucking channel.
It's like a correspondent. It's weird. Yeah. I mean, it happens with me too when I'm like listening to songs.
Yeah, I think it happens to everyone. That's why we should kind of open up our minds and see the broader perspective of how life is working for us. Because I'm like, hence the questions again. I'm watching the show and it was, what is it called?
Is it Nobody Wants This?
Yeah, Nobody Wants This. It's
so
the podcast show, and it's on Netflix. I'm sure it's still there now. And I was like, why am I watching this? Because I like watching totally different things. And I'm watching this comedy, and it was about, was it Kristen Bell? Is that her name?
I think that's her name.
Okay, Kristen
With the
Bell.
sister.
Yeah, and they had a podcast, and she was dating a Jewish rabbi. And I'm like, why am I watching stuff about Jews? And then here Angelica is reading the Kabbalah and studying Judaism. But then everything in this episode or in this show, these series, is relating to the subjects of Angelica's life.
Literally.
So I told her to watch it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was, the curiosity of like, why am I watching this? And then later on down the road, hence the next few days, I mean, it makes sense. My connection to you is pulling in my world to watch this. And then I'm wondering why. And it's because of the energy this way.
That's so funny. I mean, and so that's also a huge pattern in my life is I'm sure whoever's listening to this, if you've ever felt like the outcast in your family or in a friend group and you've just felt out of place and weird, literally me. And I think that's the constant pattern is finding the gratitude and being the different one, but not feeling small when you feel so different, whether or not it's like your partner or the family and you're such a contrast of personality, like just because you don't necessarily mesh 100% all the way, like there's beauty in the diversity.
Yeah, and it's owning that, right? That self-love also in owning that and knowing that you should, because why? Because everything else is a judgment outside of self that we're giving to self. When we're like, oh, they might not like me. It's like, but do you like you?
Right.
Asking the questions back to you again. Everything roots at us, at self. So when we have those traumas, right? It's probably because of an experiment. Fuck, we're all experiment. I know, like Jesus. But it's an experience that we've had that made us feel uncomfortable. But now life's like, all right, every time I feel uncomfortable, I'm like, whoa, something's coming. Like I shifted the perspective of seeing and feeling those signs. So when people are like, fuck, tower moments, like the world's shitting on me, and I'm like, whoa, that means something good is coming. And they're always like, what? Like you're always so optimistic. I'm like, well, we could choose to be optimistic, and then the energy will kind of match that, and then it'll come through, and then life is great, So it's like, what's wrong with staying on the positive side? It doesn't take away. Negative takes away, but not positivity.
Right. And I mean, in all seriousness, I would rather be the person who believes in magic and who is curious and will believe that rather than like, oh, like the more that you believe, the more that life wants to give you all these beautiful things. And I believe that.
Yeah.
Time and time again, like more so now.
Yeah. And it's always hard with self though, because I've battled with that for so long when the differences. Like I was just how weirdly, again, it all works out this way. But my next content that I was going to post this morning, or it was last night, was an old video that I recorded in a session, which I allowed my client to, I was like, what do you feel from me? I'm always giving you things, but I wanted her to exercise her intuition and know that it made sense. It wasn't not true. So I told her, I was like, tell me something and I'll let you know. I was like, what do you think with me? And then she was like, I think you feel different, and she's scared sometimes, but I think different is what everyone likes. And I was like, you're fucking right. I was like, I'm here giving you the session, but inside it's a constant battle of why I even do this? It's because this makes me feel normal. Because people's transformations, and when I tell them what I see from inside, it makes me feel like I'm doing something right in the world. Because in my past, I felt like whenever I was trying to be who I was growing up, it was so like, you're a witch, or that like, oh my God, she knows everything. Be careful what you think. She's reading your brain,
Oh my God.
But then now it's like owning that is the magical thing. And it's still to this day so hard. And we're all working on trying to own ourselves. And being in that power and knowing that is what attracts everything that is meant for us.
That's so beautiful. I mean, even in just 6 months ago when I was at the car dealership, And I
Plot
kind of
twist, she was at a car dealership.
I know. I took a
She's
break
car
from all
salesman.
the I took a break from all the spiritual stuff because I think my life wanted to choose how that would be like to be a salesman and be a little bit, I guess, pushed more so in an entrepreneur mindset, or I don't know. Well, honestly, to be real with y'all, I was like, I want to try fuck you money. And then I started again, like all those lessons of what came with that, longer hours working there and slaving away, and just it was a fun experience, I will say, but it definitely pushed me to again, like, is this really what I want to do? Because eventually I started getting like anxious at the job, started getting nauseous, things like that. But as far as everything now, I love that this is our norm. So sometimes when people are like, oh, what are they doing? Witchy activity over there? And I'm like, no, it's all natural ability. It's just like going to the gym, exercising that muscle.
Yeah. And knowing that you could expand it and grow it if you want.
If you want.
And I'm always like, why wouldn't you want to do this?
Right.
But I also want everyone to do this so that I'm not the only one doing it, even though that's not real. It's just what I've always felt, you know, like I'm like, oh, I'm the only one. I can't be the only one. I can't be the only weirdo. Can you be weird with me?
Right. No, but that's the beautiful thing about you too, Rara, is that you give people the opportunity to expand that muscle to the point where they truly do believe in their inner power in themselves. And I think that that's the best thing that a teacher or someone like a friend can do for a person, is support you in the way that you don't necessarily hand out everything, right? Because you don't learn the lessons, but you allow that opportunity for them to just grow even at a different rate that, you know.
Oh, I just posted that on Instagram, and it was like grow at your own pace or something like that.
Wow.
And I just feel like that needed to speak to everyone. Because again, with this, with opportunities being in the air. So now bringing it all back full circle. That was a fat ass circle. But sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, makes sense though. But since opportunity is in the air, like literally if there was a tsunami coming and we're like, oh, the tsunami says opportunity on it, you know, it's like that's coming. But knowing that it's coming, everyone's trying to prep and be ready for it. Like take shelter, do this. Do we take shelter? Do we get on the fucking boat? You know, so it's like, what do we do? It's all again in their perspective, right? And being curious of like, okay, what do I want to do? Because you might do something that might be reactive and it's totally going against the soul.
Right.
So knowing that opportunity is coming around, I think we need to remind everyone like, hey, the doors are open, but what is the priority within yourself, not what you think you should do? Like really tune in and let your body tell you. Just like our friend that we just met at the coffee shop, right? She's like, I'm really going to do this and I'm going to help people, heal people. But then her spirit was telling her, actually, just go and dance, you know, like hang off the ceilings and dance. And she's like, yeah, that feels good. And we're like, yeah, it doesn't mean you're not going to be that ultimate, whatever future you're tuning into and feeling. It's allowing you to feel that too, because that is all possible. And it wants you to keep dreaming. It, as in you, your ultimate highest version of you, wants you to keep dreaming. Why think small? If you see it, it's fucking real.
It really is real. Anything that you can think, it's all coming to fruition. It's just the matter, again, timelines, right? But, and I think a lot of people are so, that's the human part of us, right? It's like we constantly want to grind and do this and this and this. But in order to get the good ideas or like that brilliant idea that's going to just like make or break our moment, right? We might need to go take that dance class, go take that nap. Like you'll receive the downloads or you receive more when your spirit is happy.
Yeah. Literally, when your spirit is happy. Because life's not all about just like getting through it and making money. When people come to the sessions and they're thinking about how to get the money first, usually I'm like, all right, well, there you go. That is the mission right now, to change the perspective of what you want to how to make yourself happy, because it gets there. And money comes with it. Money is an energy.
Yep. I mean, even me just living that out, like that was a huge truth for me. It's like, why am I chasing money when all I needed to do was chase intention and just be.
Yeah.
Just be, not chase.
Passion definitely leads the way. And that's what a lot of people are lacking nowadays, is passion, because they're choosing self last until life kind of poops on them, and then they need to start choosing first. And then that's when everything starts working out.
Right. Don't wait until life shits on you.
Yeah. You could start changing your perspective now. Change is great, and it just needs to be fluid, So when you start nurturing self and start giving yourself that self-love, then you could start to understand what self needs, and then you'll just start kind of shifting in smooth transitions and dealing with the little human parts that come with it, which are our emotions. And yes, they're little because a lot of people think that they're bigger than them, and they're not.
Right.
And that's the power we have over it.
Right.
Well, this was amazing.
It
Thank you for
was.
talking perspective with me. What is your,
Thank you.
I guess, favorite, how would I ask this? What is your favorite perspective that you've come across in just everything right now? It could even have been with your most recent client, like something that maybe stuck with you that you're incorporating within yourself.
I would probably have to say self-worth and being certain in what I feel that day is okay. Like, because again, we can change whatever reality we want, right? But self-worth has been one of the biggest things for me. It's like the insecurity of what if I'm not good enough? What if I do fail? But I've shifted that now. And so just seeing my clients kind of, I mean, my recent client, like yesterday, he was just saying how, yeah, my company's worth so and so million. Next year it's going to be blah blah blah. And he's still battling with self-worth. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I feel like I'm over here. This person to me is like ahead, right? But he still has that little self-doubt, and I'm like, that's just a huge thing for me. Is that right?
Yeah, which is crazy because a lot of times with social media nowadays, you could see everyone living their life, making and doing grand. And then when you really get to know them, they're lacking in a lot of different areas. But it's because no one's perfect.
Right. And it has nothing to do with, I think, I'm having this whole timeline too. It's like, oh, by 35, I needed to have this and this and this. And it's like, no. The main thing is just to be happy, and that's that's what life is teaching me.
Yeah, to be happy.
To be happy.
For me, it was my little side note on my Instagram bubble. I don't know what they call those notes. There you go, thing.
Oh, yeah.
I already hear it with a thing at the top, yeah. And it was, you can think, just don't dwell. Again, that goes around to with this wave of opportunity kind of being in front of our faces. Like, I'm sure we could all feel that right now. We're like, wow, things are happening. It's the end of the year, yes. And then now that rush is starting to come where people are like, I want to get to it. I want to get to it. All of these feel possible. But it doesn't need to be at the end of the year where we're feeling like everything's possible. We could literally do that tomorrow or right now. We're like, oh, everything's possible. Is it? Believe it.
It is.
Yes.
When you're
and you
certain.
just shifted it all, So you could think, just don't dwell, because thinking and dwelling are two different things. They're happening in the same place, though, which is in your brain.
Right. The power of thought will help with the reality.
The power of thought. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah. And if you guys are ever curious of where you can find Angelica, she is also at ORA Ritual and Practice, the center, and you could find her on www.oraritualandpractice.com.
Thanks, Rara.